You just grabbed a carton of milk without thinking about it. You didn't think about the truck that delivered it at 4 in the morning. You didn't think about the cow, the feed, the refrigerated warehouse it sat in for a week. You definitely didn't think about the person who woke up before sunrise every single day for years just so that carton would be sitting there waiting for you. Nobody does. That's not an insult. It's just how the system was designed. Here's the strange part, though. Less than 2% of the people in your country still work as farmers. 2%, that's it. And each one of them, on average, grows enough to feed a few hundred other people they will never meet. That tiny sliver of humanity is quietly, invisibly responsible for keeping the other 98% alive. So, what happens if that 2% just stops? Not on strike, not delayed by weather or a bad harvest. Every farmer, every rancher, every person who plants a seed, tends a herd, or milks a cow vanishes overnight. You'd assume you'd notice immediately. You wouldn't. And that's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Let's start with day one. The sun comes up like it always does. You drive past the grocery store and the shelves still look completely normal. Milk is cold, bread is stacked. The fruit is even misted, glistening under the lights. Nothing looks wrong yet because almost everything sitting on those shelves today was grown, harvested, and shipped weeks or even months ago. Grain sits in silos that hold enough for months. Produce sits in cold storage. Meat sits in freezers by the ton. The system has inertia, the same way a car keeps rolling for a while after the engine cuts out. But behind that calm surface, the first cracks are already spreading. A dairy farm in Wisconsin doesn't get milked, and cows in pain start showing signs of distress within hours. A wheat combine in Kansas sits untouched in a field that was ready for harvest that very morning. A chicken farm doesn't get fed or watered, and what starts as an animal welfare emergency becomes, within a day or two, a supply emergency instead. You wouldn't feel a single bit of this on day one. You'd go to work, you'd eat dinner, you'd fall asleep in a completely normal world. Isn't that the unsettling part? The system that keeps you alive can be actively dying for days before you ever notice it. Now fast forward to week one. This is where things start to bend. The average grocery store only carries about 3 days of inventory at any given time. Just 3 days standing between you and empty shelves. By day 3 or 4, the trucks that normally arrive stacked with fresh produce start showing up half empty. By day 7, entire sections of the store are simply bare. Lettuce, eggs, fresh meat, gone aisle by aisle. Picture it. Parents lined up outside a grocery store before sunrise, coats zipped over pajamas because someone heard a delivery truck might come at 7. Picture a child tugging their mother's sleeve in an empty dairy aisle, asking why there isn't any milk this time, and watching her struggle to find an answer that makes sense to a 6-year-old. That's not a headline. That's a kitchen, a family, a Tuesday morning in your town. You've actually seen a preview of this before, and you probably didn't even realize it at the time. In early 2020, panic buying emptied grocery shelves in days, even though farms never stopped producing anything. Agricultural economists at Cornell University later pointed out that modern supply chains are optimized for a narrow, predictable range of demand and break visibly the moment you push them outside it. Now imagine that same fragile, lean system, except this time, the actual production side of it is gone completely. That 2020 shock was a demand problem. This is a supply extinction. There's another hidden domino here too, one most people never think about. A huge percentage of the corn and soy grown in this country doesn't go directly to human plates. It goes to feeding livestock, and some of it even goes into fuel. When that grain stops flowing, animal feed runs out fast, which means the meat and dairy you do still have left. From surviving stockpiles, gets slaughtered or processed early just to avoid losing it entirely. It feels like abundance for a moment. It's actually the opposite. It's the system eating its own seed corn. Prices explode almost immediately. Whatever food remains becomes precious. And markets do what markets always do in scarcity. They ration by price. A dozen eggs might cost what a full week of groceries used to cost. Fresh produce, once an afterthought you tossed in your cart without a second glance, becomes a luxury item overnight. Does that sound extreme? It's already happened before, just from much smaller shocks than this one. During the 2007 to 2008 global food price crisis, price spikes triggered riots in more than 30 countries, all from disruptions that were nowhere close to every farmer on Earth disappearing. The International Food Policy Research Institute studied that crisis extensively afterward, and their conclusion was almost eerily simple. Food systems look completely stable, right up until the exact moment they don't. Let's move to month 1. This is where a slow-motion collapse starts moving fast. Processed foods with long shelf lives, canned goods, pasta, rice, frozen meals quietly become the new currency of survival. People hoard, and not because they're greedy. Hoarding becomes rational the moment scarcity becomes real. If you believe there won't be food tomorrow, you take extra today. And so does everyone else around you. And that belief alone accelerates the very shortage everyone is afraid of. Meanwhile, every industry stacked on top of farming starts collapsing like dominoes. Trucking companies built around hauling produce suddenly have nothing to haul. Food processing plants that turn wheat into flour and flour into bread run out of wheat. Restaurants close, not from a lack of customers, but from a lack of ingredients. Every job that quietly depends on farming, and there are a staggering number of them, from truck drivers to warehouse workers to line cooks, starts disappearing right along with it. You'd expect governments to step in here, and they would try. Emergency food reserves would open. The strategic grain stockpiles several countries keep exactly for crises like this, but reserves are built for temporary disruptions. A drought, a war, one bad harvest. They were never built to replace an entire workforce permanently. They buy time. They do not buy a solution. So what happens once those reserves run low and there's still no one left to grow anything? This is where you have to look backward, because humanity has already lived through smaller, partial versions of exactly this nightmare. The economist Amartya Sen spent much of his career studying famines around the world, and one of his most important findings was almost counterintuitive. Famines, he found, are rarely caused by there being zero food anywhere within a country. They're caused by broken distribution and broken access, food sitting somewhere while people starve somewhere else entirely. Now picture that same broken access problem, except this time there genuinely is no food being produced anywhere at all. That's not a distribution crisis anymore. That's a different, far darker category of collapse. By month one, cities, the places most disconnected from actual food production, would be hit first and hardest. That's the twist almost nobody expects. You'd assume rural areas suffer the most in an agricultural collapse. It's actually the opposite. Farmland doesn't need farmers to keep growing weeds and going quiet, but cities have essentially zero ability to produce their own food from scratch. A city of 10 million people typically has only a few days of food actively moving through it at any given moment. Cut off the constant resupply, and a city quickly becomes the single most dangerous place on Earth to be, for reasons that have nothing to do with crime and everything to do with basic geography. Now let's go further out, to the months after that. This is where a quiet phrase from over a century ago starts to feel disturbingly relevant. The writer Alfred Henry Lewis once said that society is only 3 meals away from anarchy. It sounds dramatic, almost like a slogan, right up until you actually watch a food system collapse in slow motion in front of you. Hunger doesn't make people patient. It makes people desperate, and desperate people stop following the same quiet rules that calm, well-fed people follow without even thinking about it. You'd see it unfold in stages, almost predictably. First, panic, then competition for food, for fuel, for anything that keeps a person or a family alive one more day. Then, in the hardest hit areas, a total breakdown of the invisible systems you've never once had to think about. Trash collection, policing, basic public order. All of it depends on people showing up to work every single day, and people reliably stop showing up to work the moment their own survival is on the line instead. This isn't just a thought experiment either. Historians who study the Bengal famine of 1943, one of the deadliest famines of the 20th century, have shown how quickly a functioning colonial economy unraveled once food access broke down at scale, even while food technically existed elsewhere in the region. Millions died, not instantly, but gradually, in the exact staged collapse you'd expect. Panic first, hoarding second, breakdown last. Here's the part that should really sit with you long after this video ends. None of this requires a meteor. It doesn't require a pandemic or a war or a single dramatic headline event you'd see coming from miles away. All it requires is quietly removing roughly 2% of the population, the least visible 2% of all, and the entire structure of modern civilization starts to unravel within a matter of months. That's not really an accident. It's closer to a design flaw. Modern life is built on the quiet assumption that food will simply keep appearing, the same way electricity flows the instant you flip a switch. You've never once had to think about where tonight's dinner actually came from. And that's exactly the point. The system was built to be invisible. Invisible systems are efficient. Invisible systems are also dangerously easy to take for granted, right up until the moment they disappear. So the next time you walk past a grocery store shelf, fully stocked, brightly lit, completely unremarkable, try looking at it differently. That shelf isn't just full of food. It's the visible tip of an enormous, mostly invisible chain of human labor. The most important people in modern civilization were never the ones on television. They're the ones you've probably never seen, growing food on land you've probably never visited, holding up a world that has almost entirely forgotten they exist. So, next time you go to grab a carton of milk, stop and give thanks to the 2% of farmers who supplied that milk.